This podcast is brought to you with limited interruption by Rudy Luther Toyota. Whether looking for an exciting brand new Toyota, a certified pre-owned vehicle, or getting quality routine maintenance and service for your vehicle, Rudy Luther Toyota is the place to go. Rudy Luther Toyota, the southeast corner of 394 and 169 in Golden Valley. Broadcasting live on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, in the evenings on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk, and in the nighttime hours, 1150 AM KKNW in Seattle. It is the Matt McNeil Show for your Tuesday. Good to have you with us today. 952-946-6205. Right into it we go. Cliff Schecter is kind enough to join us. Cliff's Edge is the YouTube page. He's got a Patreon link there. Make sure you sign up for that as well. Follow all of his content because it is exceptional. He's kind enough today to join us to talk some politics. And maybe I'll let you have a little Yankees time if you'd like, my friend.
Well, I think we picked the wrong night. I mean, I could have done a wrong day. I could have done some Yankees time 2 days ago. Wasn't so fantastic last night.
Well,
we'll see.
Well,
it'll be an interesting series. It's kind of a fun throwback to the rivalry of the late 70s, early 80s.
The George Brett years. Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, when George Brett would come out spitting mad because they'd say his bat was corked and he'd lose his mind. And yeah, I mean, those are 8-year-old kind of memories. Like I was an 8-year-old. So it's kind of cool to but look, they're a very good team. The Yankees are, if they do what they are capable of, they can beat anybody. Will they? I guess we'll have to see.
We'll have to see. I wanted to get into a little bit of campaign stuff now because, I mean, there's a lot of things where we can touch on. Obviously, Trump giving the COVID test to Putin. Okay, great. When his country was dying on record levels, making sure Vlad was okay, just tells you everything about that guy. But I want to actually get into all
those private meetings. I'm sure there were no trades discussed there of maybe, hey, how about you let me do what I want in Ukraine? I create FEMA and immigrant Asian scandal.
You remember all those empty envelopes down at Mar-a-Lago with top secret stuff? My guess is those were shared over coffee with Vlad.
Oh, yes. I mean, again, I'll let you get to your question, but you just have to stop yourself every once in a while. And I won't use the curse words I would use on my channel, but just say, I can't effing believe that this person is even in the running, was even allowed to run.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we're going to suffer for this for a long time because I do think we're going to kick his butt. And I do think there's going to be people that are going to go down with him. He's going to take them down. But, I mean, the degradation of our system, what people are willing to accept and make excuses for, I don't know. Some of that you don't come back from. So it's not a good thing.
I want to go over some campaign things, though, because you and I have followed – this is not our first campaign. We have followed a lot of these. Are you hearing – I'm hearing rumors from conservatives that are saying that – okay, I'll give you an example. In Minnesota, the Minnesota House is up for grabs. The Republicans are trying to do that. That is basically where all the volunteers and the door knockers and all that stuff are coming from, as Minnesota State House races, not the U.S. House, but the Minnesota State House, that there really is no statewide organized campaign. The U.S. Senate race is not organizing. The Trump campaign is not organizing. It is a mess, and so they're frantically trying to piece together a get-out-the-vote campaign on the right. I don't think Minnesota is unique. I am sensing and actually hearing from people who are saying, really, there's just no, as a usual campaign goes, there's usually a structure there. And for the Republicans this time around, there just is no structure.
So I'll tell you exactly what I heard. And, this has been going on for a couple months now. Donald Trump, obviously legal trouble, needs money for things. Yes. Lara Trump, or Lara, or whatever her stupid name is, needs money so she can sing like a screaming goat. Melania needs money so she can tell us about how her naked pictures were art and every other grifty aspect of this family. So I'd heard this a while ago. I'd written about, but I also know some folks on the Republican side, that they were not ramping up a real get out the vote campaign. They were going to have a midterm level get out the vote campaign, and they were hoping that super PACs would fill in the rest. Well, you can't directly communicate them with them. Not that Republicans wouldn't just go ahead and break the law. I mean, we've never seen them do that before.
Vlad Putin at Mar-a-Lago. That's
right.
Exactly.
But at the same time, there are certain things that really can only be handled best by the campaign. Yeah. You know what I mean? Negative hitting ads, anybody can do. But you know, there are aspects, and this is one of them, as somebody who's worked on 3 presidential campaigns and God knows how many statewide and local. I will tell you, having your own campaign that is most invested in your campaign winning, that is best organized with your campaign materials. You know what you have, you know what you don't have, you know who you've talked to, you know who you haven't talked to. It's just to try to outsource that to super PACs is insane.
Yeah. And
that's why when people have tried to argue with me, you know, or not people, right? When dumb coughs have tried to argue with me, oh, Trump's winning, you know, and I said the whole time, what I've explained very clearly what my problem is with various polls, that I don't just go believing them. Look, there've been 1 or 2 that have shown like Kamala Harris up 8 or 10 in Michigan. I don't believe that either. You know, anything that doesn't make sense. I look at the preponderance of polls, but I look at other factors as somebody who's worked on many of these things that determine them. Incumbency, economy, these other things. And get out the vote operation is one of those things. You know, the Democrats suffered. One of the reasons that we won in 2020, but we suffered a lot of down ballot losses, was because we actually cared about people not dying, unlike certain other parties. And so we weren't going door to door because of COVID in the same way. And it really cost us among certain key communities that needed to be turned out. You didn't see that in 22, right? Mm-hmm. So although you did in some states, actually in Florida in 2022, we'd never sort of put the band back together. You know, now from everything I've heard, the Democrats have the best turnout operation, or at least have put the most money, resources, the smartest minds into it that they've ever done before. Mm-hmm. And the Republicans are running a midterm one. That can be the difference of 2 to 4 points in an election. And when you're talking about swing states, 2 to 4 points, even in a place like, Florida, Ohio, can make a hell of a difference.
Well,
so,
and you,
yes, you're hearing correct things.
Minnesota, we have I think the reported volunteers, and once again, these are reported by the campaigns, but it's a 10-to-1 ratio, Democrats over Republicans, and we're not technically a swing state. When you look at the Pennsylvania lineup and what the Republicans are reporting, the Democrats are reporting, the individual campaigns, Harris is mopping the floor in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin.
Yep.
In North Carolina, they've opened up a lot of stuff down there where they can, obviously helping with the hurricane. But
Florida, they opened up huge number of offices in Florida because they've said from the beginning, did the tour there, that they consider it winnable, a swing state. They're going after it. I don't think they've done as much here in Texas, which are 2 that are kind of on the bubble. But I think of those 3, they looked at everything and thought Florida was where they had the best chance. But I even think they've got some offices set up here in Texas. I don't know if Trump has any. So I mean, again, and at the very least, that's going to help Sherrod Brown and Colin Allred, right?
Yeah.
It's certainly going to help Debbie Mercosal-Powell in Florida. And again, by far the most important race is the presidential for all the various powers it gives, and for the creepy, weird orange pincushion on the other side who we're running against. But when you look at obviously on the Senate level, if we come in and we're stuck with a minority or a Joe Manchin majority again, I mean, I will often point to your state. Look at what happened after they took back the state house and the state senate. The sheer volume of incredible legislation that was passed that made a difference in people's lives, that showed people, because we are now on the same side as most people on issues that win with 70% of the vote. They get bottled up in filibusters publicly, in the Senate nationally, so they never get a chance to be voted on. But if you get a chance to vote on background checks, 90% approval. You get a chance to vote on codifying Roe versus Wade, 70% approval. You get a chance to vote on an assault weapons ban, 70% approval. Mm-hmm. On stuff dealing with mitigating climate change, 70%. I mean, you can go on. Family and medical leave has like 80% approval. Mm-hmm. You get to actually vote on these things and not have them paid family and medical leave, I should say, and not let them bottle these things up so people never see them. They get it, or they don't get it when it comes to their turnout operation, clearly. But if we eliminate the filibuster and get to pass those things, it will change the world. because people, we will have delivered for so many people. I think the Republicans literally will be out of power for a generation.
Well,
I think you'll be looking at a New Deal style period of time, and then we'll have to deal. The last thing I'll say is, obviously, we're going to have to deal with the insanely, ridiculously corrupt and stolen Supreme Court to make sure they don't overturn these things. And luckily for us, well, it's right there. It's right there in the. Oh no, that's right. It's not in the Constitution how many members there are, and whether we can impose term limits or whether we can impose and say you have 18 years to serve and then you're done. By the way, we're going to impeach you, Clarence Thomas, because you've committed any number of crimes, and we're going to raise it. No, not from 9. I mean, again, what's what Democrats do, but from 9 to 13 to me. I mean, we never are swinging for the fences. The truth of the matter is we have not added to the Supreme Court since the 1860s. This country has grown by, 11 times? It was 30-something million then. It's 330-something million now. So beyond even the political impact of that is the impact on people's everyday lives. And, because the Supreme Court can't even take most of the cases. Mm-hmm. They don't need 4 more justices. We need to, come pretty close to doubling. I think there should be something like 21 justices. And then you revolve who is on various cases, which depoliticizes them anyhow.
Yeah.
That, to me, is what should be done if we do it right. At the very least, there should be 17 of them. And I hope they go that route. And if you do that and you take the power out of old, blackout drunk Kavanaugh's hands, buying the land upright in Gorsuch's hands. I can't even make a specific joke about Clarence Thomas because I think he's committed every type of grift and every type of scandal you can, long dong silver. Can I say that? Yeah. I just did.
Yeah.
In any case, he and Mark Robinson like to frequent some of the same spots together. Let's just put it that way.
It prevents the ability for some guy to buy an RV for somebody and get the ruling they want to on a Supreme Court case.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And I'm just saying, that's the thing is that if the dual, there's a number of structural problems with our system. If the filibuster is gone, we have all this backup legislation people have wanted for 50 years, 30 years that we get to pass. 1, 2, ridiculous, this situation with the Supreme Court, most of all, but all of our courts. We get to reform that and add and expand the courts and change and make sure there are strong ethics rules, all these kinds of things in place. 3, we get to do, again, we're never swinging for the fences on this. I hear people say, yeah, we should add D.C. as a state. Damn right we should add D.C. as a state. That's something else, by the way. You don't have to pass a constitutional amendment. That is done by an act of Congress, signed by the president. D.C. should be a state. Puerto Rico, if they have a plebiscite, they decide that they want to be a state, should be a state. And I don't think in this century territories should exist. Sounds a little manifest destiny, doesn't it? I would argue that we have Guam, we have the U.S. Virgin Islands, and we have the Northern Marianas, where if you combine those populations, you'll get yourself up pretty close to the population of Wyoming, which gets 2 senators. I believe they should get 2 senators, too. We could add 3 new territories and get 6 new senators. And my guess is Democrats would end up having 4 or 5 out of those 6 every time. And you'd start to solve some of the South Dakota, North Dakota, more cows vote than people issue in the Senate.
Well, we got to take a break. I want to come on back because I think all that stuff is, long overdue indeed, and we can fix it. But I also want to talk a little bit more about some good numbers, I think, for Harris. Cliff Schecter joining us. We'll take a break. It's the Matt McNeil Show.
Runways I walk, boom, got go pop.
It's the Matt McNeil Show. Cliff Schecter kind enough to join us today. Cliff, so there's one number that doesn't make sense, and I'll get to that in a second. But when we talk about real numbers, because polls, as you say, you really grain of salt. Absentee ballots. There are a few sites I'm keeping track of. One is a guy named Christopher Bosey, who is been keeping track of the absentee ballot returns in some of these toss-up states. And right now, especially Pennsylvania, really favoring the Democrats. It's like 70% of the returned ballots are from the Democrats.
Wow.
So it's a tremendous advantage. Once again, that's a snapshot of right now. Things could change, but looking good.
Obviously, all of these are. Yeah.
And so it's a good sign that the early voting is helping there. Michigan as well, North Carolina as well, Florida, there's a Democratic advantage. And so there are these things that are out there. Plus, of course, we talked about the fundraising advantage they've had, although I think Harris has still not released her September numbers yet. But, she has had
I think they're trying to add every last dollar in there because they're going to be unbelievably ridiculous.
Yeah, I
really
agree
do.
with you.
I'm not just saying that. I'm in that game. That's part of what I do, raising money for Democrats. I know we've raised a ton, and it's not been that hard. People want to give to that ticket.
Yeah, and they had Trump had 160, but the Democrats had 55 million just in two big fundraisers in California alone in September. Just alone in that. So I agree wholeheartedly.
Just those two.
Yeah.
Well, I'm shocked there. Because the Democrats obviously had like Bruce Springsteen and George Clooney, and the Republicans had Chachi and Ted Nugent's guitar. And I don't see how those wouldn't bring in the kind of numbers. Maybe a clip of John Voight's hair from his mullet in Deliverance. I'm not sure. In any case, that's what they have show up there. But more to the point. Boy, where was I going with this? Before I started making mullet jokes and the rest. Fundraising. It's not only these numbers we're talking about here. This actually relates to the point you were making earlier, which is Kamala Harris. First of all, their campaign. While Grifty McTrump's campaign sat there and used it on his legal fees for his 487,000 trials, and now another one will be coming because the Haitian immigrants have sued him under an Ohio law for putting them in danger. He's used it for that, and again for the goat screamer, Laura Trump's singing voice, and whatever. They said right away that their only priority was getting Trump elected, which it really isn't. It's just legal fees and grift. But I guess secondarily getting him elected. They have given no money, which is why the Senate campaigns are underfunded. They've given no money to the House campaign organization. Kamala Harris gave something like $25 million, I believe, to the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. She gave $25 million to the Democratic House Committee, and she's given $2.5 million, I believe, to each state party. So if you think about that, obviously, yes, there's local advertising that goes along with that and whatever, but there's also turnout operations that go with that. That helps coordinated campaigns, as we call them, so that people are working and getting votes out for all of the candidates. And I assume it's the same where you are. Besides everything else we have going on here, we passed that abortion ballot last year, the one that the polls told us would be close. Why I don't trust the polls at all, 57-42. We crushed it. Well, now we have and they're lying about it openly, but we've got even some Republicans now doing ads pushing back, including the former head justice of our Supreme Court, pointing out that that issue 1 on our ballot here for anybody from Ohio, you vote yes, because that is going to kill gerrymandering forever here. We will have a ballot amendment. You don't understand what that will do. We will immediately, when you add in the excess COVID deaths, and I'm sorry, they did that to themselves. On the right, a study was done that showed that some of the other factors of younger folks moving into the 3 Cs, as we call them, Columbus, Cincinnati, and Cleveland, and people and older folks dying in the rural areas and nobody refilling, nobody moving in. What you get, you add in the un-gerrymander, which also skews it a couple points their way, and even in a statewide election, suddenly we're a swing state again. Plus, we've got 3 Supreme Court justices up, which means we take over the state Supreme Court, and we're running on all the fact that all 3 of those state Supreme Court justices here have said they want to overturn our ballot measure if they can figure out a way to do it because they're anti-choice jerks, which means they've just given us an issue to hammer them on. So, that's why that money matters. That fundraising you're talking about with Kamala Harris matters because she has a ton of money now for her campaign.
Well,
but what they're doing is they're building a movement. They're getting it to everybody, and that is going to make a huge difference everywhere. When you're talking about the Minnesota House, that will make a difference there.
Well, and the ad buys they've got scheduled are going to be massive. You are going to see Harris ads everywhere in the next few weeks, and that's a good thing. Here's one thing, and I want to get your thoughts on this. There is one number which goes against this, and that is registered voters. There's a lot of Republicans getting registered, but that's it. It's a sole individual number. There's not anything else backing it up, which makes me wonder if this is what these companies they're paying to try to get Republicans active, all they're doing is finding people, registering them to vote, registering them as Republicans and saying, see, we got this. I get the impression that's what it is. It's a grift by these companies against the campaign where basically they've just created this number. Right. We got all these people registered. We've done our job, even though many of the people that are getting registered are either not knowing they're being registered or not knowing they're being registered as Republicans.
Correct. That would be my guess.
Yeah.
So, as much as I'd love to say I know that definitively, I can't. But if you think about it logically, the fact that they've outsourced all of their field operations means that super PACs are doing it and other groups. Gee, what's their motivation if they're getting paid by, registering people? If they'll go to the local zoo and start registering, they'll start registering like spider monkeys and
pick me hippos.
Exactly. I mean, we've got the very cute little hippo here, in our zoo, and you can come and see Fiona and register. So I mean, I mean that's the problem. Again, when you outsource it to people. And look, I've got a super PAC. I'm not saying that people have to be dishonest to have them, but there are a lot of people who are if they don't handle it right. So I would want to see more on that before I would trust that is anything of a positive for them and not just somebody checking boxes so they can get paid.
Walz last night on Kimmel, you catch him at all?
I did not. Was he good? I'll check it out if he was.
A little slow, but then it got going. It was a good time, and you can tell Walz just has that. I think that all these late night hosts are so used to certain kinds of politicians, and Walz is just not that. And so by the end of it, it's
he's the avuncular. You just got to, the way he's a little nervous beginning of the debates, you just got to get him to relax and let that avuncular side of him out. And then he's like the most fun guy in the world to be around.
Oh, yeah.
At least I haven't been, but he seems that way.
Oh, he is. He is. And, I mean, you saw the 60 Minutes interview. And, by the way, the beginning of that 60 Minutes thing, too.
Yeah, I did see that.
What wonderful was it watching 60 Minutes absolutely just with factual truth decimate Trump at the beginning?
It was awesome. And, that maybe that's what happens when you cancel on them. You piss them off. Instead of decimating him, he could have been on there during that time probably answering those charges and at least trying to, to BS his way out of it. Instead, just taken apart. Again, you have to look at all of these things. The preponderance of everything says it's not good for the MAGA movement right now. So, let's just keep fighting. Don't take your foot off the pedal until we hit November 6th.
Absolutely. Keep your fuel on fire there with Cliff's Edge, the YouTube page. All the content you need to make sure you're making informed decisions this November. Cliff Schecter, Cliff's Edge. Cliff, thank you very much. We'll take a break, come back.
Thanks,
it's the
buddy.
Matt McNeil Show.
Where's my telephone?
Broadcasting in the evenings on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk in the nighttime hour, 11:50 a.m. KKNW in Seattle, and, of course, in Minneapolis, St. Paul on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It is the Matt McNeil Show. Nice to have you with us today. And, of course, if you like to hear more of that Cliff interview, if you missed part of it, you're more than welcome to go on iTunes, SoundCloud, all the usual spots. We'll have it actually posted here fairly soon, before too long. And make sure you stop by Cliff's Edge, his YouTube page. I'm pretty sure some of this interview we did will be posted up there, plus other things as well. You can go find what you need over there, and it is some good content. You will enjoy that. In case you're wondering what we were talking about earlier in that interview, here's the story as broken by, I think it was the Times broke this about the Woodward book. As the coronavirus tore through the world in 2020 and the United States and other countries confronted a shortage of tests designed to detect the illness, then President Trump secretly sent coveted tests to Vlad Putin for his personal use. Putin, I already know you're going to get a lot of Republicans saying, so he tried to help an ally of the United States. Now, first of all, Russia's not our ally. Russia's pretty much our enemy. And, I mean, it'd be one thing if they were sending them and we had them and no one else had them and you're sending them to our NATO allies in Canada and Mexico and our allies in Asia. No, that's not what happened. During the time when Americans were panicking, Americans were scared, Americans were getting sick, Americans were dying in the thousands every day, Donnie T said, Here, Vlad, I love you. Here you go. My American citizens don't need them. I want to make sure you're happy. Exactly. And it's easy to say, well, Matt, there's COVID tests everywhere. Back then, when he gave them, they weren't. And so he chose our enemy, Vlad Putin, over U.S. citizens. And you want to get mad and say, well, that's not true. Dude, that's you. I don't care if you are a conservative. He made sure you didn't get those tests or I didn't get those tests. This is not about Democrat or Republican. This was about Americans who were going through a pandemic, and he chose Vlad Putin over all of us. Yeah, slimy. Putin, petrified of the virus, accepted the supplies, but took pains to prevent political fallout, not for him, but for his American counterpart. He cautioned Trump not to reveal that he had dispatched the scarce medical equipment to Moscow, according to a new book by Washington Post associate editor Bob Woodward. Putin, according to the book, told Trump, I do not want to tell anybody because people will get mad at you, not me. And that's true. And I'm mad at him right now. And Putin is Putin. Putin's a dictator. But this is a guy that's supposed to be a democracy, and he placed Vlad Putin over American citizens. 4 years later, a personal relationship between the two men appears to have persisted. Woodward reports as Trump campaigns to return to the White House and Putin orchestrates a bloody assault in Ukraine. In early 2024, the former president ordered a aide away from his office at Mar-a-Lago, his private club and residence in Florida, so he could conduct a private phone call with the Russian leader, according to Woodward's account. The book does not describe what the two men purportedly discussed, but it quotes a Trump campaign official casting doubt on the supposed contact. But the unnamed Trump aide cited in the book indicated that the GOP standard bearer may have spoken to Putin as many as 7 times since Trump left the White House in 2021. These interactions between Trump and the authoritarian leader of a country at war with American ally from the basis of Woodward's conclusion that Trump is worse than Richard Nixon, whose presidency was undone by the Watergate scandal, exposed a half-century ago by Woodward and his colleague Carl Bernstein. Trump was the most reckless and impulsive president in American history and is demonstrating the same character as the presidential campaign in 2024, Woodward writes in the book War, which is set to be released on October 15th. And I'm going to connect an A to B. Once again, Donald Trump had boxes and boxes and boxes of classified documents that he was not supposed to have at Mar-a-Lago. Some of those were empty files that had files in them. And now you find out that during this entire time, Trump was buddy-buddy with Vlad Putin, our enemy, for 1 second. And do not think for 1 second, if Vladimir Putin asked Trump for Alaska, I think he'd honestly, we really did, get a sweetheart deal back then. We should probably give it back to them. I think it's the least we can do. I honestly think he would. I honestly think Donald Trump would give Alaska back to Russia if they'd asked for it. I mean, it just is. He's a horrible, horrible human being. During a pandemic, he chose Vlad Putin over American citizens and made sure Vlad Putin was taken care of first and foremost than the country that he was the president of. Disgusting. Just plain disgusting. But that's him. And I'm going to make sure we understand. Because either his MAGA base is racist tolerant, or the only thing that's important to them is seeing their perceived enemies, namely Democrats, suffer. They will all show up to vote. They will. They absolutely will. So you had better be making your freaking plan right now to vote. Whether you're in the Chicago metro area, Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, Minneapolis, St. Paul, in the Washington area, you'd better be making your plan to vote. And I get it. We are in 3 states. The radio stations you're listening to me on right now are in 3 states, which are pretty much relatively safe Democratic states. Illinois, Washington, Minnesota. And as much as Republicans like to keep thinking, oh, Minnesota's in play. No, it's not. It's going to be Trump does not resonate in the Twin Cities suburbs. And last I checked, they have a state of 5.7 million people. The Twin Cities having 3.7 million people. Yeah, you kind of need to win the metro area and the suburbs, and he's not going to. When you get out to those tertiary suburbs where there's more cornfields than there are houses, sure. But, no. Anyway, when you look at it, it's kind of easy to say, well, we're doing our job. Washington State, you guys elect a lot of Democrats out there. Chicago, you are one of the safest Democratic votes in the country. Probably only behind New York and California. Minnesota, relatively safe. But at the same time, we all need to vote. And definitively, everyone you talk to, especially anyone who is 35 and younger, make sure you encourage them to vote. Get registered and vote. Please, please. Elections do matter. Now, let me get into, first of all, the news that we are keeping track of. This Milton, Hurricane Milton, the only reason I was listening to a report on this morning from a meteorologist. The only reason Milton downgraded itself was it was spinning so fast that its own motion disintegrated its eye and had to reform the eye of the hurricane again. That's how dangerous this thing is. It was spinning so fast that it actually broke its own eye wall. Unbelievable. Has been downgraded. Well, currently it is a category, I think it's category 4, almost a category 5. It was downgraded from a dangerous category 5 storm to a pretty dangerous category 4 storm Tuesday. It takes aim at Florida's Gulf Coast, which is still reeling from Helene's record-breaking landfall just over a week ago. The storm's maximum sustained winds dropped to 140, but now are at 155. Category 5 is at 157. It's just below Category 5 status. It's up in the air whether some meteorologists are thinking it's going to actually go back up to Category 5 for a little bit before it goes into Florida, but some believe it's not going to. Needless to say, they're thinking it's going to downgrade right before it impacts to a Category 3 because they just can't see how this much energy would be able to get up onto the land like that. But, man, nature always wins, man. Milton's intensity has rebounded, to the National Hurricane Center in its 2 p.m. Eastern Time update. That was 1 o'clock Central Time. And, of course, 11 a.m. on the West Coast. While fluctuations in intensity are expected, Milton is forecast to remain an extremely dangerous hurricane throughout landfall in Florida. The center of the storm is expected to make landfall in the Tampa area Wednesday evening and move northeast across the central Florida on Thursday. It looks like it's right on track to just go right into Tampa Bay, which 51 counties in the state are under a state of emergency while millions are facing the prospect of evacuation. Now, it should be noted, yesterday Ron DeSantis was getting a big chuckle out of the fact that he's refused to talk to either Joe Biden, the president of the United States, who sincerely wants to try to help any way he can, and Kamala Harris, the vice president, who very much likely will be the president of the United States come November, and will probably be dealing with the state still recovering by the time she gets sworn into office. He has refused their phone calls as he chuckles. I should remind everybody, Ron DeSantis took emergency storm relief money, $10 million in emergency storm relief money so that he could fly immigrant kids from Texas to Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts on a stunt where they couldn't pat themselves on the back enough. He took $10 million in Florida money for emergency storms, which they're about to get their second one, and the hurricane season ain't done yet. Considering how warm the Gulf of Mexico is, I'd say there's probably a decent chance another one's going to form down there. Where it goes, we'll have to see. But that state's in the process of being scoured freaking clean, and he took $10 million of emergency funds so he could do a got those Democrats fund, in shipping some immigrants to an island off the coast of Massachusetts. Well, he also doesn't seem to be focusing on the storm at all. This is today. Florida Governor DeSantis has continued his full court press against a pro-choice ballot measure that will be in front of the voters next month. This seems to be his biggest priority right now as his state's about to get blasted. DeSantis' administration is threatening to bring criminal charges against a local news channel that aired an advertisement in support of the abortion rights measure, Amendment 4, which could overturn DeSantis' 6-week abortion ban and restore access to the procedure until fetal viability. By the way, I want to just make sure we understand. If anything, if you want to know anything that tells you that this ad is 100% spot on, it's DeSantis frantically trying to make sure that that ad does not air. The Florida governor has spent substantial amounts of taxpayer money to fight Amendment 4, including by weaponizing a nonpartisan government agency to spread misinformation and launching an unprecedented investigation into petition signatures already verified by the state, alleging the need to combat voter fraud. Last week, Florida's Department of Health sent a letter to NBC affiliates suggesting that an ad in support of Amendment 4 violates the state's so-called sanitary nuisance law sanitary nuisance law. The letter, first reported by journalist Jason Garcia, claims the news channel may be committing a second-degree misdemeanor and that his employees could be penalized for a 60-day jail sentence. Yeah, freedom of speech, yeah. It's unclear if the agency only sent the letter to the one NBC affiliate. The sanitary nuisance law is meant to curb conditions that can threaten or impact Floridians' health. It normally pertains to issues like overflowing septic tanks and problematic garbage disposals. Instead, DeSantis' Department of Health is applying the sanitary nuisance law to an ad titled Caroline, in which the Tampa mother talks about being diagnosed with brain cancer while pregnant. Caroline got a life-saving abortion in 2020 after her diagnosis, but she believes she would not have been able to get one today under the state's 6-week abortion ban. The doctors knew if I did not end my pregnancy, I would lose my baby, I would lose my life, and my daughter would lose her mom, Caroline said in the ad, which is paid by Floridians Protecting Freedom, a pro-choice group behind Amendment 4. Florida has now banned abortion even in cases like mine. The state health department claims the ad is false and dangerous because Florida's 6-week abortion ban includes an exception for the life and the health of the mother. Caroline would be able to get an abortion in Florida to save her life, the agency claims, but in reality, the ban's exceptions are insanely vague and do not offer any clarity about how a sick or near-death or pregnant person needs to be for a physician to provide life-saving abortion. In many states, they have basically told the mom, I'm sorry, you'll have to die because I'm not going to get sued about this. And Florida could fix this law tomorrow, and they refuse to do so. So, no, the ad's legit. DeSantis is scared, and he's focusing on this as opposed to the hurricane that's about to strike his own state. It's the Matt McNeil Show.
Spike heels and skin-tight jeans. I've got a fistful of love that's coming your way, baby. Spike heels and skin-tight jeans. I've got a fistful of love that's coming your way, baby. Spike heels and skin-tight jeans. I've got a fistful of love.
It's the Matt McNeil Show. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. And by the way, and once again, so there is this one number that's out there, and I brought this up with Cliff, registered voters, and the Republicans are leading the Democrats in getting registered. But that's the only place that they are leading. And I noticed, and I talked about this about 2 weeks ago, that in Texas and Florida, there were all of a sudden big movements from the Republicans to stop people from getting registered in those states because they were noticing this. So I'm a little I'm a little like, what's going on here with that number? Because every other number, whether it's absentee ballots ordered, absentee ballots returned, donations, volunteers, everything else is pointing towards Kamala Harris. It's just that one number. Well, I think what is happening is these private companies that are working for Trump are out there getting people registered without them knowing that they're getting registered or getting registered as Republicans just so they can see, we got all these people registered. And I don't think they're actually interacting with people. I think they're just filling out paperwork. I frankly think that that's what's going on. We'll see how that goes out. But when you get to the point like DeSantis is trying to stop ads from airing, and you get conversations like I'm about to talk to, and this other person, this is Franklin Graham, an organization of evangelical Christians who are working to elect Vice President Kamala Harris, claimed on Tuesday that Trump-backing evangelical leader Franklin Graham is now threatening to sue them over their ads. Writing on its Twitter, the Evangelicals for Harris group said, lawyers for Franklin Graham have informed us they're planning to sue us to block voters from seeing our ad. In a follow-up, once again, this is not the sign of a group that's out ahead. This is a sign of a group that's desperately behind, and they're trying to find anything they can do to stop basically people from seeing a message they don't want to see. In a follow-up post that elaborated on the lawsuit's threat, Evangelicals for Harris taunted Graham for throwing his weight behind Trump despite the former president's decades of well-documented immorality and his recent felony conviction. Franklin is scared of our ads because we do not tell people what to do or think. The organization wrote, we merely hold Trump's own words up to the light of Scripture, a necessity of repentance and biblical warnings against leaders exactly like Trump. Franklin knows he cannot use the words of Jesus Christ to defend or justify Trump, a strong man whose own words and deeds reject truth, endorse violence, and advocate for worldview opposition of the fruits of the Holy Spirit. From Galatians, indeed, the character is more reflective of the spirits characterized as anti-Christian in 1 John, and followers of Jesus should study closely what spirits they should walk in step with as well. The group has then... Well, that was in Galatians, too. The group then accused Graham of putting his hope on a man whose darkness we see manifest when police lines were overrun in our nation's capital on January 6th in Springfield this last month, in the spirit of fear and anger fed at every Trump rally Franklin attends. The group finished its statement by letting Graham know that if he wants to file a lawsuit, we'll see you in court. And so, he's just trying to, it sounds like he's just trying to threaten them to not run the ad before the election. Because sue them. Seriously, sue them, and good luck with that. The other one is Elon Musk, and I did want to mention this just because this is who they are. This is the Republicans. The U.S. Secret Service reportedly intervened last month after tech billionaire Elon Musk, whose companies have received billions in taxpayer dollars, posted a so-called joke on the social media claiming that no one is even attempting to assassinate Joe Biden or Vice President Kamala Harris. In nearly a 2-hour interview with Tucker Carlson posted on Monday, Musk and the far-right host wisecracked about both his original post and the thoughts he led to now removed tweet. After laughing about what will happen to Musk if Donald Trump loses his presidential bid, Musk suggested he will be in prison and wondered if he will see his children. I've been trashing Kamala nonstop, Musk told Carlson. He mispronounced her name. Well, the Kamala puppet, I call her, the machine that the puppet represents. Yeah, she's irrelevant, Carlson declared, waving his hand in the air dismissively. I made a joke which I realized I deleted, which is like nobody's even bothering to try to kill Kamala because it's pointless, Musk said, laughing at Carlson. What do you achieve? Nothing, just by you just buy another puppet. Trump's trying to kill nobody's trying to kill Joe Biden, Musk added. It would be pointless. Some people interpreted it as though I was calling for people to assassinate her, Musk explained. Sure sounded like it. But I was like, it doesn't seem strange that no one's even bothered to try, he said, laughing. Nobody tries to assassinate a puppet, Musk concluded. And then they laughed and they laughed and laughed. So, yeah, that's them basically, once again, hey, I got in trouble by basically saying, why isn't anybody trying to kill them? And so now I'm with you. Why isn't anybody trying to kill them? And if someone does, of course, Elon Musk goes, how dare you suggest the person I was saying was trying to kill you, and won't somebody do something to stop her? How I was somehow responsible. Yeah, exactly. That's who these people are. There is a lot right now in this country. There's a lot of information that's coming down. And I'm I got to be honest with you, I'm a little bit in a bit of a, because I'm getting so much information, and I'm trying to cut through the stuff that I can see is not real, the amount of stuff that's getting posted, which is just clearly made up stuff, versus the stuff that I can tell and get some actual, knowledge off of. And when I see this sort of thing, when I see people attacking issues and ads for issues that ad shouldn't be able to air, or that they're starting to say, well, why doesn't someone try to kill her? I'm just saying, I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying, why hasn't anybody tried to kill her? Like Elon Musk is doing and laughing about it. That shows me they know that they've got a big problem. They have got to discourage Democrats from voting. They have got to do this. They have got to. If Democrats show up in force, they have no counterpunch to that. And so right now, it's about doom, it's about gloom, it's about anger, it's about fear, and they're trying to discourage you from voting. this is going to only ramp up. It is only going to ramp up. So here's what I'm going to suggest. Get out there, get active, volunteer, donate, door knock, send out a postcard, make sure you and everyone else is going to vote, make sure they're registered, find out how they do it, contact people in North Carolina and in Wisconsin. I've contacted a bunch of people who are in Wisconsin. In Michigan, I've contacted a few people in Michigan. In as well, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada. Contact these people. Make sure they're registered and make sure they get voting. Chicago and Seattle. Talk to you later. Minneapolis, St. Paul. Hour 2 up next. Hour number 2 of the show here on your Tuesday. It is the Matt McNeil Show. Matt and Patrick and Brett is here too. Patrick, let's get the good news. You had mentioned to me here something about the Twins broadcast, which once again, for most people, especially if you had Xfinity, you did not have any kind of you're squeaking over there, Brett.
I know the mic was backwards. There we go. Making sure you can hear me.
First day at radio. That's all right, Brett. Why is this not working? There we go. The Twins fans, if you do, I mean, I'm still so angry with how the season ended. But if you do want to watch them, apparently we have gotten rid of the curse that is Bally Sports, correct?
Yes, the Twins will have their games produced by MLB, which a few teams already have. So that will make it a lot easier to watch games online, stream through your own devices wherever you want, and you won't be as restricted as you were and have a lot more accessibility.
I remember back in the 1980s when you'd get the business du jour of the day, like when the guy that ran Domino's bought the Detroit Tigers, and because Domino's Pizza was out of Detroit, and you'd have these people there, and none of them, it was truly just a patting themselves on the back. See, I own the Detroit Tigers. And I felt sorry. Every time I thought about this, I always felt sorry for the people at the Detroit Tiger Stadium because the only pizza you have there is Domino's, man. That's like, nothing pushes you more towards the hot dogs and the burgers. So, like that.
Well, it's Detroit. They should have had Little Caesars. Well, I guess the guy owned Domino's anyway.
Well, it's one of them, yeah. I guess.
Yeah.
But when you look at, I can't figure out what Bally's was doing. They clearly had no idea what they were doing. And it seems like, dude, brah, man. It'll be awesome because we'll have luxury boxes at every time. It'll be awesome, man. We're going to score. That's what I kind of get. That's how it feels like this network had been run.
I don't get why they made such a big investment even when they made that, 5 years ago in 2019? I think the writing was on the wall that regional sports networks were a thing of the past. And lo and behold, it's happening faster than I thought.
Patrick, they're keeping one of them. What team are they keeping in Bally's?
That was the Atlanta Braves with the one team they did not drop.
I'm surprised Major League Baseball let them have any. If you want to know the truth, I'm surprised they let them have any because I think it's only a matter of time before they'll screw that one up.
Yeah, it's the wave of the future is just putting this all through streaming and having your own Twins package, your Braves or Brewers, White Sox, whatever team you want. Stream it that way. I mean, that would make me more likely to watch the Twins because I'm not getting cable just to watch sports.
No, it's at least we can watch them choke away the entire season. Oh God, I'm in pain about this Twins team.
Well, things are solved. They fired their hitting coach.
Did they?
Yeah.
This is the worst American League playoff ever. Detroit and Cleveland and Kansas City and the freaking Yankees. And I didn't want to say that to Cliff, but God, the Yankees. Dear Lord. Nothing has got me rooting for whatever team comes out of the National League more than this.
I could live with it because the White Sox weren't the other AL Central team. That would have set me over the edge.
The only thing keeping me sane in this world is how bad the Chicago White Sox were, man. That is my least favorite team. At least they were horrific. But you were up. I mean, oh, God. Yes, that was a horribly managed. That whole thing was just horribly managed. But I blame the owners. They didn't. I'm glad you got your money because I can tell you right now, you're not going to have a full house unless it's full of visiting fans until maybe June. No one's going to go. You're not going to get maybe opening day will sell out, but that's going to be it. because I'm glad this is what happens when you become, I'm jamming as much money in my pocket as opposed to investing in the team kind of baseball team. No one wants to see it because I can tell you right now, I'm not going to go to a game next year. Because why? The owners aren't involved. You can see how frustrated I'm getting here.
I'm with you. I mean, why would you follow up a playoff appearance with cutting payroll? I mean, nothing.
Because they're jamming money in their pockets. They don't care about really the product on the field. So I'll preface this next one because for a few years I sat and watched Metro traffic cameras and I did traffic reporting in town, and it got very repetitive. But one of the things that broke up the monotony sometimes is when someone was pretty dumb. A heavily traveled bridge over 169 in Brooklyn Park is now closed indefinitely after it was damaged by a truck transporting a backhoe on Monday. Didn't check the height restrictions. Did not do that. More than 17,000 motorists who use 77th Avenue, Brooklyn Boulevard, Elm Creek Boulevard Bridge. Well, that's how you get up to Elm Creek Park. Wow, man. They're forced to find an alternate route until MnDOT determines the bridge is safe to reopen, says Kent Barnard. Several concrete beams sustained significant damage, said MnDOT bridge engineers who inspect the bridge documents and damage, remove the loose concrete. When it is complete, the state's bridge office will update the structure's rating and determine how much weight it can bear. While the bridge over the Northwest Metro Highway is closed, Highway 169 below remains open in both directions. Well, that's comforting. Oh, I might go under that. I might just hit the gas a little bit when you're underneath that bridge. Just get right under there, zip on through there, as do the ramps to and from there. But, yeah, that's a major. I'm hoping they charge this knucklehead who did this. And I get it. Blue-collar workers, sometimes they feel like they get ganged up on. You got to know the height of your freaking load, you fool. We put that on every dang bridge. Hey, it's too short. And yet, bang. Think about how fast he was going to do the damage to multiple concrete beams, let alone the backhoe. I only wish I could have been there for the phone call to the boss.
Oh,
hey, boss, I got to let you know I got to talk to you about something here. You know how I was taking that backhoe up to the office?
Promise you won't be mad.
I was going pretty fast. I was going to have it there pretty soon. Here's why I'm not going to cut this guy any slack, because every time it's just a guy who's just not doing their job. And this is dangerous. Remember the walk bridge out on Crosstown when the truck tagged into that?
Oh,
and
yes,
they had to take
right,
the whole thing down, man. You're lucky no one was on that thing. You could have killed somebody. And, I mean, because that was really just that little walkway bridge. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine what would have happened to someone if they were on that thing when he hit it? There are consequences. So they were redoing my street in my neighborhood about 5-6 years ago. And we were out there, and apparently the foreman comes up to this guy and fires him on the spot. And you're saying to yourself, wow, man. And of course, the dude's like, dude, that's not fair. He's like this. The foreman comes over, walks over to us, and he says to us, we have the schematics of the road where every line is, where he's doing. We told him to wait. He got impatient, and he started digging where he wasn't supposed to dig, and he hit a gas line. And so now all of a sudden we have to shut down the entire project until we get the gas company out here to fix the line because he just wasn't paying attention and was being a dunderhead. No problem. Fire away. Because if you're going to blow up my neighborhood because you're a little impatient, maybe you shouldn't have the keys to the backhoe. Maybe this guy was the guy driving the backhoe. I don't know. Maybe they downgraded his position to driving the truck and, well, oh no. But no, I do feel sometimes sorry for the guys like this because, blue-collar work is hard work, and you're working hard, and you're doing these things. But when you're dealing with trucks and backhoes and gas lines and stuff like this, you can't just be stupid. You've got to be, I shouldn't have hit that. No, you shouldn't have, should you have? I think this is why. When I sat and stared at cameras, I would see this stuff all the time. And I'm like, guys, and to a point, I think part of it sometimes is the business because you look at him and it's like, did you not explain height to the guy? Did you not explain the schematics? In the case of the guy that got fired in our neighborhood, yeah, the guy said, here's the schematics. He specifically started digging right where he wasn't supposed to. And when he hit the gas line, he was like, oops, and acted like it was no big deal. And he's like, you don't understand what you did. I mean, you can't trust a guy like that because next thing you know, you're going to blow up someone's house.
Yeah, exactly. It seems minor, but they have major consequences. Yeah. Absolutely. Have you ever,
there used to be some width restrictions in some of the ramps downtown, and some of them are still pretty tight. You try to take a Sienna minivan into some of those parking ramps downtown, I get creepy, I'm kind of creepy all the time, but I kind of creep along. I'll creep along in those parking ramps because some of those, especially those spiral turns coming down, I saw a guy take off the fake wood paneling on the side of a station wagon one time, on the side because he just wasn't able to turn it sharp enough on one of those roundabouts.
Just go fast enough, don't think about it. Like pulling off a Band-Aid. You'll be fine getting through that.
Okay.
Yeah.
You are now officially not speaking on behalf of the radio station. Brett Johnson.
Don't do that.
Brett Johnson is I'd sue him. No, don't do it. Just don't do that.
No, I've been through those downtown parking lots, too. When I went to a Twins game earlier this summer, I was like, am I going to be able to get out of this thing?
You know what's a notorious one?
It was
Science Museum one. Have you done the Science Museum off of Kellogg there? Or I think it's off Kellogg. When you have to go down, that is literally the size of the minivan. You got to creep through that sucker if you want to go into that. Again, considering it's a Science Museum, like everyone's going down there with a minivan. Everyone, that is one of that's one of the safer ones. You got a bigger truck, you can't enter from the top of that ramp. You have to come in through the bottom because there's no way you can fit through that. There's just no way. You got to be careful with this stuff, man.
And you think too, like, what do you do if you get stuck in that thing?
Well,
that's an awkward call to AAA or
anyone in the Science Museum. Any ideas in there, science guys?
Yeah.
Oops. If you do, it's one of those places. If you get stuck in there, unless you bust the front window or the back window, you ain't getting out of the car. Or else they're going to have to hook the tow truck up and do a big yank, which is going to do some real damage to it. So that's a bad one. There is one or two in the downtown. There's one off Marquette that has got the same thing where it's literally minivan size hole that you have to drive through to get up into the ramp.
I wonder if that was the one I was on, because I happened to go to a Twins game the same night Caitlin Clark was playing at Target Center, so that was just a joy trying to park down there. But I think I was on the one, off Nicollet Mall.
Was this parking spots really narrow? Like it was a parking ramp from the 1970s? Or from the 1980s when they went all to the hatchbacks and everything.
It was more the hall getting down there that was more narrow than the parking places itself.
You got to be careful with this stuff. Hey, I feel sorry for them, but man, you just did how many hundreds of thousands, maybe $1 million worth of damage to this bridge because you weren't paying attention to your job. You almost blew up a neighborhood because you weren't paying attention to your job. I have no problem with the firings in these cases here. By the way, you like my new hat here?
That's a solid hat. Harris Walls, if you're not watching on our social streams, do it. You got a great hat on.
I've got the camo hat. I finally came because they sold out 4 times before.
Oh, really? Yeah. So you had ordered this quite a while ago.
Yeah. Union made, man. Union made.
Nice.
I'm sporting the hot look. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. Patrick Cooligan from the Minnesota Reformer joins you. What are you guys talking about?
Yeah, we're talking about the Angie Craig versus Joe Tirab debate, which took place yesterday in Lakeville. We're going to talk about how Tirab was trying to smear Angie Craig as being caught up in the defund the police movement, which is funny because she was quite in the opposite direction on that.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll be talking about that. And then Patrick has a write-up on psychedelics and whether they're going to be legalized in Minnesota. Apparently we had a board that met a little while ago, including some Republicans that were at least a little more friendly towards decriminalization. So got that and more to talk about today.
There has actually been some interesting studies about psychedelic mushrooms and mental health issues, and there is actually a lot of proof that this is not a bad thing. I'm going to guess it's in that vein. So we'll hear about it. Patrick Cooligan from the Minnesota Reformer talking to Brett right here on AM 950.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Brett Johnson joining you here on a Tuesday afternoon. And as usual on Tuesdays, it is time to have our visit with the Minnesota Reformer as we take a look at what they have been working on over at MinnesotaReformer.com, as they are a great resource for the latest in Minnesota news and politics. And joining us today to talk about what they're working on in the Reformer is Patrick Houlihan, who is the editor-in-chief of the Minnesota Reformer. As today we have a few topics we're going to be talking about, including how Minnesota's insulin policy could be playing a role in the presidential race. We'll also be talking about a recent debate between Angie Craig and her Republican challenger Joe Taraab. Plus, we'll be talking about psychedelics. Have a fun conversation on that because we have some news on whether some of those could end up getting legalized in the near future here in Minnesota. So lots to get to. Patrick, thanks so much for coming back on the show today.
Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. So let's start off in the political realm and talk about what happened between Joe Taraab and Angie Craig, who, of course, are the two candidates in Minnesota's 2nd Congressional District, which is widely expected to be the most competitive congressional race here in the state. In their second and final debate yesterday morning over in Lakeville, Angie Craig and her Republican challenger Joe Taraab clashed over public safety and police reform. In fact, Taraab, who is a former federal prosecutor, accused Craig of being swept up in the defund the police movement. Now, Craig pushed back against this as she's been endorsed by the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association, and she pushed back by emphasizing her long-standing support for law enforcement. So let's talk about how Taraab attacked Angie Craig on this, Patrick, and how Craig responded, because as I am reading through, he mostly was doing this through Craig's support of the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, which in the grand scheme of things really was not much of a defund the police bill whatsoever back when that was proposed in the House.
Right. This is a very fragile thread that he bases this attack on. That bill, which passed the House, did not pass the U.S. Senate, never became law, was crafted to try to get at least a few Republican votes and to pass. So it was by no means a defund police policy. It only would have put some restrictions on no-knock warrants and so-called chokeholds. And I mean, what's amazing about this is that if there was anyone in Democratic politics who was absolutely not swept up in the defund the police fervor, it was Angie Craig. I mean, she's built almost her entire political profile on the idea that she stands with police. As you mentioned, she's got the endorsement of the MPPOA. She was the first Democrat to come out against the Minneapolis ballot initiative in 2021 that would have reorganized the police department. And she caught a lot of criticism from Minneapolis Democrats in particular, who said, how dare you? You don't represent this district, and this issue doesn't affect you, and you're just doing this for politics. But as it happens, statewide Democrats then followed suit, including Tim Walz, Amy Klobuchar, in particular, and said they were not supportive of that ballot initiative. But she was first, and she's continued to side with law enforcement for better or worse, depending on your politics. But so for some of us, she's been aligned far too closely with law enforcement. But the fact of that alliance with law enforcement is not really in dispute. Also worth noting that she, of course, is a victim of violent crime herself, when a man who is apparently disturbed attacked her in the elevator of her own apartment building in Washington, D.C., and she fended off that attack. So I'm not really, in politics, they always try to turn a weakness into a strength, a strength of your opponent into a weakness, and I think that's what he's trying to do here. And Taraab obviously has his own law enforcement credentials, but I just don't think that this attack is credible.
Yeah, especially when you look at Craig's record, as Michelle writes about in the article. Craig, of course, first gained the police group's endorsement back in 2022 because of her stand against the trying to dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department, but she's also introduced legislation that would make it easier for police departments to obtain military-style vehicles. And she does not support removing qualified immunity for police officers. So those are basically all stances that, very much fly in the face of the defund the police movement, and then let alone the fact that, as you said, last year she was attacked in that Washington, D.C. apartment building. So I guess you were kind of alluding to this, but I'm curious what T-Rob sees as an opening here in this race, because even though this is supposed to, so at least on his end, is this possibly even like a last stand for the race? So at least on his end, is this possibly even like a last stand for the Republican Party here in CD2? Because making a lot of waves nationally in terms of trying to flip this seat from Democrats. Seem to be making a lot of waves nationally in terms of.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got a good buy. Yeah, I mean, I think he's got a good biography. He's a handpicked who was in leadership. Representative Tom Emmer, who, I think they're able to raise, I think they're able to raise a lot of money for him, but he's completely unknown. And definition, Angie Craig has done a good job of positioning herself. Angie Craig has done a good job of positioning herself to really match. I mean, every single time she runs for re, has a lot of experience running in close races. I mean, and she lost for re-election. It's been close, and she lost a race in 2016. So at this point, I think I would give her the advantage going into Election Day.
Well, you can read more about what Michelle wrote on that debate between T-Rob and Craig over at MinnesotaReformer.com. I want to move on and talk about something you wrote about in today's newsletter for the Minnesota Reformer, and that has to do with psychedelics, because this sounds like one fun task force to be part of. A lot of times people think, I don't want to be part of a government task force, but this one might be a little bit different, because the legislature recently created the Psychedelic Medicine Task Force, and they have been holding a number of meetings over the past while, and they have come up with some new recommendations according to a new report, and you were able to write about some of these, Patrick. So I'm curious, are we moving closer to having psychedelics legalized here in Minnesota? Because this whole task force seemed kind of interesting, being that even some Republicans on the task force seemed at least open to the idea of at least decriminalization. What recently happened with this task force?
Well, in 2023, the legislature created this task force, and I think that it had a little bit of Republican support. And so they've been meeting, and now they're getting close to filing their report with the legislature. There is an outline for the final report, and they've taken some votes. And I mean, I think it's an important step. We should note that these recommendations to the legislature are non-binding, so the legislature would actually have to act, but they have voted to remove criminal penalties for adult use and possession of personal amounts of psilocybin mushrooms, and have also recommended that money go to clinical research, and also that there would be a state-regulated program for clinical administration of natural psilocybin. So that's essentially money for research, and then also the beginnings of medicinal use. And so I think it's a ways to go before we have legal mushrooms here. And I should note that decriminalizing would be different than legalizing. In decriminalizing, you're just not going to sanction someone, whereas in legalizing, you probably set up some sort of regulatory regime, and there would be dispensaries and so forth. But again, I think it's a hopeful step for people who think that psychedelics have a future in psychological treatment. And I also just want to point out again. I mean, the guy who alerted me to this, Curtis Hanna, he's a Republican drug reformer, and he tells me that the two Republicans on the task force voted for the decriminalization recommendation. So I think that's important. I don't think that this has a shot if Republicans take the state house. I think this would be, you really would have to have a DFL trifecta here. But I think there's another. I'm also eager to see what the final report says about tribal sovereignty, because we're going to have tribal cannabis dispensaries, and so we'll have to see what they say about psilocybin dispensaries on tribal lands and so forth. But definitely a huge. I mean, if you had told me as a college kid in the 1990s that this would be the future, I would have been pretty skeptical. But there is momentum here.
Yeah, I most certainly would have been as well. And it sounds like you're pretty confident that it would pretty much need to be that DFL trifecta in order to get this passed and decriminalized. I was thinking maybe it could be a little more nonpartisan, being that we don't, have third parties that were siphoning votes from DFL candidates like we saw with the legalized cannabis candidates back a few years ago. And even though it does seem like there is some bipartisan support behind this, still the politics play a role, and it very likely would require a DFL trifecta. Other question I would have for you on this, kind of a two-part question, would be, at least in that, with the idea of tribal sovereignty, that would be the idea where they would at least be able to sell on their reservations until it would be fully legalized in the rest of Minnesota, similar to what we've seen with cannabis, correct?
Right. I mean, we don't know, what will be in the report, but that certainly seems like a possibility.
Well, you can read more about that over at MinnesotaReformer.com and follow along with that, because it's something that, as we kind of were alluding to, it's going to be in the news a little bit more, even though, as we were thinking like 20 or 30 years ago, this would have seemed absolutely insane had we been even having the conversation about psychedelics and mushrooms possibly being legalized in certain states in the U.S., let alone Minnesota. Final thing to ask you about, since I know we are running a little bit short on time, and I just briefly want to get your thoughts on this, because there was a good article in the Reformer today that talks about how Minnesota is figuring into presidential politics when it comes to the price of insulin. We, of course, had our own insulin bill passed in Minnesota a while back, which definitely made insulin more affordable for many Minnesotans. So I'm curious how this issue is working its way into the national presidential campaign, because as it sounds like Minnesota's law would go a lot further than even what both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are proposing when it comes to trying to make insulin even more affordable.
Right. Folks may remember that we had quite a debate over this in 2019 and 2020, and in April 2020, Wallace signed what was called the Alex Smith Insulin Affordability Act. It was named after Alex Smith, who died because he was rationing his insulin because he couldn't afford it. And so we passed a pretty strong bill here, and it did get some follow-up from in national politics, where President Biden signed a law requiring that people on Medicare cap co-payments for insulin at $35 a month. Of course, that's just seniors. Most people you have to be on Medicare to get that deal. Now Harris, she wants to extend the $35 cap to all Americans, and so that's I think an impressive policy win for advocates of people with diabetes, and going from Minnesota, and looks like it could really take off nationally, which would provide a lot of relief to people who really need this medicine to survive, obviously.
You read more about that over at MinnesotaReformer.com. Interesting read, again, how Minnesota's insulin law has kind of been making its way towards that national debate we're seeing, at least at the presidential level. Again, MinnesotaReformer.com. I've been speaking with Patrick Houlihan, who is the editor-in-chief of the Minnesota Reformer. Again, find more of what he and the rest of the great writers are writing about over at MinnesotaReformer.com. Patrick, as always, thanks for coming on the show today.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, let's take a break and send things back over to Matt McNeil on AM 950.
I'm out here
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, the Matt McNeil Show. By the way, shouldn't mention the Lynx are back home, take on the Sun tonight, Game 5. They win, they go and take on New York for the WNBA championship. I'll just say this. I want the Lynx to win because, frankly, that could be the greatest women's basketball championship tournament ever. Lynx versus New York, it'd be phenomenal. It would be phenomenal. So I'm rooting for the Lynx. I want you to go into the national the championship series. Hopefully they get that done. I will also say for the people down in Florida, some unfortunate news. It is indeed, Milton is now indeed back to a Category 5. It's recently it went up to 165 miles an hour. And I saw some video footage of the hurricane plane that goes through to measure all the details on it. They're getting tossed around like a salt shaker. It's insane. It is insane. It really is. Yeah. It is. It's terrifying. It is just absolutely terrifying. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. So you know how Republicans keep going out there and they say, hey, all you Democrats, all you want to do is you want to make this about abortion. You want to make, that's the only thing you got. That's the only thing you got. It's about abortion. We want to talk about the other issues. You know how they do that? Yeah. Funny story. They're the ones that keep bringing it up. We head on down south of the metro area. The Republican candidate for the Minnesota House says he believes abortion should be limited and expressed openness to abortion bans after the 5th or 6th week of pregnancy before many women know they're pregnant, according to a recording obtained by the Minnesota Reformer. Aaron Rapinski is a Winona business owner and a city council member running against DFL candidate Sarah Kruger to fill the seat vacated by DFL Representative Gene Pulowski, an anti-abortion Democrat who retired this year after serving in the legislature for 38 years. During a side conversation at a town hall, GOP Senate candidate Royce White, you had a town hall with Royce White? What? All right, tells me everything about you. Rapinski said there should be stricter limits on abortion. Rapinski's campaign manager said the candidate was unaware he was being recorded. No duh. What are you talking about? The abortion issue is settled. We don't have anything to say about it. I'm off the record. Hey, I want to put a ban in to where no one can get one immediately. Wait a second. You were recording me. Hey, stop that. You are the ones that keep saying, why are you guys bringing it about abortion? You guys can't stop talking about it. Hilarious. I don't know what the exact time frame is, but there needs to be a compromise and a conversation on both sides, and so maybe it's 5 to 6 weeks. I don't know, Rapinski said. Okay, you know what I'm not going to do? You know what I'm not going to do? I am not going to sit there and say to another human being, you have to meet my demands when it comes to your health care choices. I mean, imagine a white man, unfortunately, gets cancer and says, you know what, I'm going to get chemotherapy. I'm going to try to survive this. And I say, whoa. We need a compromise here because I disagree with chemotherapy. You need to come to my direction. Is there anyone on the planet that would think that would be okay? Nope. But when it comes to the women, hey, white guys gotta be white guys, huh? Jerks. Stop trying to dictate everyone else's life. Seriously. 5 to 6 weeks? Wow. A study of more than 17,000 women who were pregnant between 1990 and 2012 found that the average woman was 5.5 weeks pregnant when she became aware of the pregnancy. Women with unintended pregnancies, those more likely to end with abortion, and learned they were pregnant at the average of 2 weeks later than women who were trying to conceive. Because if you're trying to conceive, you're paying attention to that. You're taking tests quickly and stuff like that. If you're not, you don't think you're pregnant, it can be a month and a half, 2 months before you start noticing, wait a second, some things are starting to change. I better check this out. Given this data, a ban on abortions after 5 or 6 weeks would constitute a near total abortion ban. Minnesota law doesn't regulate when a person may have an abortion, and lawmakers removed obstacles to the procedures like mandatory waiting periods in the 2023 legislative session. There has to be a compromise, and so there have to be instances that's probably the right choice, Rapinski continued. I'll be honest with that, but that's a conversation between a patient and a doctor, and there has to be limited. So I say a limited amount of that time, that's acceptable. Not 20 weeks or 24. No, it has to be a limited amount of time. Once again, I'm going to leave it to the doctor and the patient, but only after I establish the rules that they can operate under. Funny, Rapinski's views on abortion are not listed on his campaign website, but he recently attended a memorial for preborn lives lost to abortion in Winona, according to his campaign Facebook account. Rapinski declined a reformer's request for comment. House District 26A is a swing district that helped to undermine or help determine which party controls the House. Protecting abortion access is one of Kruger's priorities, a key difference from Pulaski, although the area's former DFL representative still endorsed her. So, Republicans, if you're wondering why Democrats keep bringing up abortion, it's because you idiots keep talking about abortion. And frankly, you're helping out the left. Blaine City Council, I wanted to touch on this here before we get in the break, too. The Blaine City Council formally censured one of its members on Monday night for violating provisions of the council's Code of Conduct. The vote, which is an added agenda item, and at Monday's meeting came after an independent investigator substantiated parts of complaints filed by 2 city employees who accused Councilmember Lori Soroya of mistreating them and publicly criticizing their work. Meanwhile, Soroya, the council's only Democrat, Muslim, and woman of color member, why? I wonder why the council is constantly going after her. Oh. On Monday, sent a letter to the U.S. Department of Justice and the Minnesota Inspector General asking both agencies to investigate allegations of mismanagement of taxpayer funds, conflicts of interest, and retaliation against her for raising these concerns. Soroya, who's up for re-election in November, issued a statement through her attorney questioning of the timing of the censure and the substance of the city's investigation. Oh, I think it's definitely they're trying to play politics here, saying it appears to be a pretextual, politically motivated attack on Mrs. Soroya's campaign for re-election. Soroya has been a fierce advocate for Ward 1 residents in her first term and has raised concerns about how the city is financing a new sports and entertainment complex that includes a baseball stadium near 105th Avenue. Soroya and some residents have questioned whether Mayor Tim Sanders had a conflict of interest in the project and the developer. Soroya has raised concerns about the city spending $12 million and put forth new tour fields containing PFAs and the National Sports Center, and the news the city lost $1.5 million in scam came to light. Soroya vaguely referenced the loss during a June 3rd council meeting amid discussions about giving the city manager a raise. Under the city manager, our city lost $1.5 million. People do not know this in our community, and I've not been allowed to speak on this publicly, but we need to be transparent, Soroya said that night. A Blaine staff member filed a complaint based on Soroya's behavior at the April 9th Planning Commission meeting, in which Soroya is accused of using her position in the city council to influence decisions about a development in the neighborhood. Soroya said she was speaking as a private citizen at the meeting. But needless to say, it's it tells you, Blaine, Blaine keeps electing pretty horrible Republicans up there. Let's just be honest about it. They do. And, I don't think it's once again, she's the only Democrat, the only Muslim and only woman of color on the city council, and they are constantly going after her. They are constantly going after her. Now, they might start to say, well, she deserves it. I think the fact that you guys went to censor her before the election with an added agenda item kind of raises an eyebrow or two. But I'll just say that there definitely seems to be something going on in this town. I just sort of say this seems like a frantic attempt by the other members of the city council to shut her up. And whether you think they're doing it because she deserves to be shut up, or whether you think they're doing it because she's trying to bring to light some big problems within the city council, that's up for discussion. But it sure feels like what they're trying to do is to stop her from talking for whatever the reason. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. One more story when we come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show here on your Tuesday.
Toffee sip like coffee, wake up, change your mind and drop me love to hate me crazy, shady, spit me out like hot wasabi, lick me up, I'm sweet.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show. So starting this next year, nearly every student in Minnesota eats free breakfast and lunch in school. To qualify for the free meals, the schools must be enrolled in the National Lunch and Breakfast programs. Pretty much most schools are. While most schools in the state now offer those free meals, two public schools have decided to opt out: Prior Lake and Byron. Byron is just down to the west of Rochester. Prior Lake Savage Area Schools said the decision was based on community feedback, which she said showed strong preference for greater meal flexibility and variety. Option the school says aren't possible under the program. So let me get this right. You're going to have kids go hungry because they're offering onion rings. Oh, my God. I love the onion rings. Oh, my. Because that's kind of what it sounds like. You're opting out of the program that feeds all kids because you get a few variety options. Okay. I grew up in Prior Lake. I trust the school district. I understand the choices they made, said Kelly Bonnier. Bonnier has two children who attend Prior Lake High School. She and her daughter, Addison, both participated in two surveys the district conducted last spring about the meal program. The district says the survey was conducted in March, found that parents prioritized saving money. The district then did a 2-week trial simulating what meals would look like under federal standards. They conducted another survey afterwards and collected feedback from 390 parents, guardians, 19 staff members, and 417 students. Feedback from the trial included positive comments about our current meal program and concerns regarding the smaller portion sizes and reduced variety in the trial. Hey, starve those kids. My portion size is not big enough. I can't get seconds. That kid needs to go hungry. I might be paraphrasing there, but Addison, she said she disliked the food that was offered during the trial. Terrible. It was like a snack, basically. I was hungry before I got to class, she said, noting too much of the fruit that was given to the students was thrown out. They gave me fruit, so I don't want that, so some kids need to go hungry. I guess I'm paraphrasing, but once again, you're opting out of the free school lunch meal, so. Not everyone agrees with the district's decision. How can we make kids go hungry just so other kids can buy ice cream, says Kim Fortin. Yeah, that's a pretty darn good question, Prior Lake. How can you make kids go hungry just so other kids get ice cream? Do you allow them to eat the ice cream in front of the hungry kids' faces just to rub it in a little bit more, Prior Lake? I'm asking a question. Do they get to keep their onion rings right in front of the hungry kids going, I'm munch, 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 I'm going to go get seconds? Is that what you do? I'm just asking the question. Her daughter's in 9th grade at Prior Lake High School, so they couldn't participate in the surveys last year. The people who have money making decisions for families who have less money, Fortin said. Exactly. She worries about families who don't quite qualify for free or reduced meals but still struggle financially. Kids in all other districts get to go eat, and we have kids that have to go to class hungry. It's not right. It's just not right, she said. Channel 4 heard from several other parents who said they feel the district wasn't transparent with the process. Still haven't heard what the results from the survey. Fortin wished the district would start the process over with a new survey. Parents only, one question: should Prior Lake remain off the free lunch program, yes or no? Add up the answers, publish the data. In a statement, the district spokesperson said, if any family has concerns about their child's ability to afford meals, we are committed to making sure cost is never a barrier. We work with families to provide financial assistance, ensuring that every student has access to nutritious meals. Our program is financially self-sustaining and offers free breakfast to all students with lunch price to an affordable $3.25. Our goal is to meet the needs of every student while maintaining quality and variety and community values. That's fine, but do you force them to go through shame hoops to get the free food? I'm asking you, are you forcing them to go through shame hoops? Do they have to take the pink slip up to the food counter to get the free meal? And is it the regular meal or is it the bag lunch from behind the counter? Is that what's going on? I would like to know what your details of this plan are. Do they get ice cream? Do they get onion rings if there's a variety? I'm asking that question. The superintendent of Byron Public Schools also noted similar reasons to opting out of the program. We email, our students and families appreciate the options and size portions compared to what they once received in the food program. Hey, sorry your kid's going hungry, but my kid loves the double stuff. All right. We also found that we're minimal waste food because the students are able to pick what they eat. This is by Royce Dyer inside the type of food plan in the high school level. All right. So once again, you have two school districts who have basically said, nope, we're not going to feed all the kids. What we're going to do is, because variety and portion sizes, and they're giving out too much fruit. I don't like fruit. I like hash browns. Okay. At least that's how I'm taking this story. And if there's anything, this is just... So some kids have to go hungry. All right. Yeah, all right. I am so freaking tired of conservative America. I am so tired of you. I'll be done with it. Native Roots Radio is up next. Have a good one. We're back tomorrow. Till then, see ya.